I have spent a lifetime watching markets, watching men, and watching myself. What I tell you today isn't theory pulled from books, nor the wishful thinking of men who dabble for sport. It is the product of years in the ticker rooms, the smoke-filled broker offices, the sleepless nights with nothing but figures and tape running through my mind. I learned early that the market has only one master, and it is not me, nor you, nor any man alive. The master is the trend. Everything else, rumors, opinions, newspaper clippings, expert chatter, these are but noise, a distraction designed to take your money if you let them. You think you can outwit the tide? Tell me, can you order the sea to retreat when it rushes in? Can you stand against a hurricane and keep your footing? The trend is that hurricane, and the noise is just the rustle of leaves before it. Which do you think matters? When I was a boy in the bucket shops, I didn't know what trend was in the language of theory, but I knew something was moving beneath the numbers on the tape. Prices went up, or they went down, and they did so with a certain persistence. I would jot figures in my little book, test out systems, place my pennies, and what did I find? That when I followed the line of least resistance, the market paid me. When I bucked it, it punished me. It was as simple as that. Have you ever felt that sting? The sting of being right in your head but wrong in your pocket? You say, the stock ought to go up, it must go up, yet the tape goes the other way. Do you know why? Because your opinion is noise, and the market's movement is the trend. Only one of them pays the bills. A man who ignores the trend because he hears some fellow whisper in the corridor that the stock is a bargain. He is a doomed man. I've been that fool, and I have paid the price. Many times. Take it from me, the tape doesn't lie, the voices do. What use is a bargain stock that keeps sinking? What comfort is it to say you bought cheap when it becomes cheaper still? If you had a choice, would you rather be right, or would you rather be rich? That's the question the market asks every man, though most are too stubborn to answer it truthfully. Rich men in the market are rarely those who argued with the trend. They were those who got aboard and held on until the tide turned. Ask yourself, are you willing to do that, or will you sell at the first jolt of noise? The hardest thing to learn is to sit tight. That is where the money is made, not in constant trading, not in flitting about because some fool says take profits or the news is bad. The market will tell you when to buy, and it will tell you when to sell, if you have the patience to watch. You don't need tips, you don't need chatter, you don't need yesterday's newspaper. You need only to keep your eye on the main current. Do you stand by the riverbank arguing with the ripples, or do you watch the stream to see which way it flows? If you know the answer, then you know how to trade. Noise is seductive. It makes you feel important. It makes you feel as though you're in on something others don't know. But the noise always comes after the fact. By the time the paper prints the reason for the move has already taken place. Haven't you noticed? They'll tell you a stock went down because of bad earnings, but the stock was falling days before the news was out. They'll say the market rallied because of some speech in Washington, but the advance was already underway. Which mattered more, the printed reason, or the price action on the tape? And yet men chase the reason, always the reason, as if knowing it will fill their pockets. Do you want reasons or do you want profits? The tape tells its own story. Every price, every tick, is a vote. Men can lie, but the market never does. If the price rises, it means more want to buy than to sell. If it falls, the opposite. It does not matter why. The why is irrelevant. That's what so few men will accept. They want to argue with the fact. They want to overlay their hopes, their fears, their clever theories. But the tape doesn't care. It does not know you. It does not owe you. It does not answer to you. It answers only to the weight of supply and demand, to the great currents of capital that none of us can control. You may resist, you may debate, you may scorn, but the tape is always right. Ask yourself, how many times have you lost money trying to prove the market wrong? I tell you something else, the big money is never made in the short swings. It is made by following the long trend, the major movement, the big wave. Anybody can guess a rally for a few points. But who can sit and ride the bull market for months, even years, without listening to the endless din of reasons to sell? Who can hold through the noise that screams every day, "The end is near"? That is where the fortune lies. But the noise tricks you. It whispers fear, it whispers greed, and before you know it, you've sold your position only to watch the trend march on without you. Have you ever sold too soon? Do you remember how it felt to watch the stock climb higher after you left it behind? Noise kills more traders than ignorance ever did. An ignorant man, at least, might follow the obvious movement. But a man full of noise, full of tips and gossip, is poisoned. He buys because some loudmouth tells him it's sure, and he sells because another loudmouth says it's over. He's tossed about like a cork on the sea, never once asking which way the tide is running. I ask you, would you sail your ship by listening to the chatter of gulls, or by studying the compass and the stars? The gulls are noisy, but the compass tells the truth. What saved me time and again, when I remembered to practice it, was the discipline of ignoring everything but the line of least resistance. Price is never too high to buy when the trend is up, and never too low to sell when the trend is down. Men laugh at this, they say it's reckless, but they are the same men who go broke buying because it's cheap or selling because it's dear. Cheap can become cheaper, and dear can become dearer, for months, for years. Tell me, how many fortunes have been lost waiting for the market to turn around at a price that looked too high or too low? And how many fortunes have been made by those who simply followed the movement as it was, not as they wished it to be? I recall times when I held stocks through wild swings, the papers shrieking disaster, brokers urging caution, friends begging me to get out. And yet the main trend was still up, the tape still pointed forward. So I sat and I waited, and the trend carried me to profits greater than I could have imagined. Had I listened to the noise, I'd have snatched pennies and lost dollars. Noise is the enemy of patience, and patience is the soul of successful speculation. Do you have the patience to endure the noise, to sit tight while lesser men scurry? That is the question every trader must answer for himself. The trouble with most men is they want action. They think they must always be doing something. So they chase the noise, they seize on every flutter of news as if it were the signal to trade. But the market doesn't pay for activity, it pays for right activity. One good trade, aligned with the great movement, will pay you more than 50 little trades sparked by gossip. But men are restless. They cannot sit idle, so they let the noise whip them about until their accounts are bled dry. Tell me, must you always be busy, or can you be wise instead? I have seen bull markets that made men rich simply because they bought and held, and I have seen bear markets that ruined whole crowds because they refused to accept the downtrend. They said it cannot go lower, but it did. They said it must rebound, but it didn't. They clung to the noise of hope while the trend was mercilessly against them, and yet the signs were there, plain as the sun in the sky, for anyone who would look. Do you think the tape conceals itself? No, it tells you everything. If you have the courage to believe it over the noise, the market is not kind. It will not forgive you because you are earnest or because you need the money. It will strip you bare if you let the noise blind you to the truth. But the man who follows the trend, who ignores the daily chatter, and holds to the line of least resistance, he can ride the movement to wealth. He may not be right all the time, no one is, but when he is right in a big way, and the profits from those times more than pay for the little mistakes. Isn't it better to win big and lose small than to nibble at every scrap the noise throws your way? You see, the market demands simplicity. Complexity is the invention of noise. The great fortunes have been made by doing one thing well, following the main trend. All else is vanity. All else is distraction. Do you want to trade or do you want to gamble? One listens to the noise, the other follows the movement. Which one are you? The market punishes those who argue with it, but enriches those who obey it. That is not a theory or a poetic turn of phrase, but a hard, cruel fact carved into the experience of every man who has ever speculated. I know it, for I have lived it. You think you can impose your will on the market? You think because you have studied a balance sheet, because you know the management, Because you have read the newspapers that the market must bend to your reasoning. That way lies ruin. The market does not hear your arguments, and even if it could, it would not care. It listens only to the weight of money, to the pressure of supply and demand. When you pit your opinion against the trend, you are not engaging in a debate. You are standing in front of a locomotive, insisting it stop because you raise your hand. Tell me honestly, do you believe the locomotive will stop for you? I have met men who thought themselves cleverer than the tape. They spoke with certainty, declaring that a stock had gone too far, that it must reverse, that the movement could not continue. Yet, while they reasoned and argued, the trend rolled on, stripping them of their capital. A man who argues with the market is like a drunkard quarreling with the ocean. The waves will not listen, and the tide will not retreat. Do you want to be that man, staggering against the surf, or do you want to be the man who sets his sail and lets the wind carry him? The choice is always there, but most men choose to fight, and most men are broken by it. When the trend is down, nothing can stop it until it has exhausted itself. You may say a stock is too cheap, that it represents great value, that it is being unfairly punished. But while you cling to these notions, the price keeps falling. Cheap becomes cheaper, and still you hold on, insisting the market is wrong. But the market is never wrong. You are wrong. The punishment comes swiftly, in margin calls, in evaporated profits, in the gnawing torment of being right in theory and bankrupt in fact. Haven't you seen this happen? Haven't you heard men mutter, "It can't go any lower," only to watch in horror as it does? That is the punishment of defiance. On the other hand, the market enriches those who obey it. To obey does not mean to surrender your judgment entirely. It means to align your judgment with what the tape is telling you. If the main current is up, you buy and you hold. If the main current is down, you sell or you stay out. It is not complicated. The difficulty lies in the human heart, which craves to be right even more than it craves to be rich. Men will argue with the tape because they cannot bear the humiliation of admitting they were wrong. But humility is the price of obedience, and obedience is the price of profits. Will you cling to your pride, or will you accept what the market plainly shows? I recall times when I thought myself too clever, when I told myself the market had overextended, when I closed positions because I believed I knew better. And what happened? The trend carried on, leaving me behind, sometimes even dragging me into losses when I tried to sell short against a powerful bull movement. I had been enriched before when I obeyed, but when I argued, I was punished. This lesson came again and again until it was burned into me like a brand. The market does not reward cleverness, it rewards discipline. It does not enrich the man who can build the finest arguments. It enriches the man who can silence the noise in his head and obey the obvious movement. Can you silence that noise, or will you let it dictate your trades? Many traders lose money not because they lack intelligence, but because they refuse obedience. They believe obedience makes them lesser, as though following the trend was some kind of weakness. They want to conquer the market, to dominate it, to prove themselves superior. But the market cannot be conquered. It is larger than all of us. It is not an opponent to be defeated. It is a force to be harnessed. The man who harnesses it is enriched, and the man who fights it is ruined. Think of a river. The obedient man builds his mill where the current flows and lets it turn his wheel. The disobedient man stands in the water, trying to push it back with his hands. Which man gains from the river, and which man is swept away? There is another punishment that comes from arguing with the market, one that is worse than the financial loss. It is the loss of confidence, the slow erosion of one's own judgment. Every time a man argues with the trend and is beaten, he feels smaller, more uncertain, more desperate. Soon he is trading not from a position of strength, but from weakness, chasing every tip, grasping at every rumor, unable to trust even the evidence before his eyes. His capital is gone, and his nerve is gone, and all because he would not bow to the authority of the tape. Have you ever felt that gnawing doubt after a string of losses, when you no longer know whether to buy or sell? That is the psychological punishment of defying the market. Contrast this with the man who obeys. He may take losses, yes, but they are controlled, for he cuts them when the trend proves him wrong. When the trend favors him, he holds and he reaps. His confidence grows not from arrogance, but from the knowledge that he is working with the current, not against it. Every profit reinforces his discipline, every loss teaches him humility, and both enrich him in different ways. He becomes steadier, calmer, less susceptible to noise. Do you see how obedience shapes not only the account but the character of the trader? When you obey the trend, you also learn the power of patience. The market moves in great waves, and those waves take time. The man who obeys knows that his job is not to outthink every ripple, but to ride the main tide. The disobedient man grows restless, trading in and out, seeking to catch every fluctuation. He argues with the very nature of markets, which is to advance and retreat in cycles. The patient man is enriched, for he captures the big swing. The restless man is punished, for he bleeds away his capital in commissions and small losses. Ask yourself, which kind of man are you becoming with each trade you place? I have seen obedience create fortunes in silence. A man buys, he holds, he ignores the chatter, he obeys the trend. Others laugh at him, call him reckless, say he should take his profits. But he waits, and when the bull market has run its course, he emerges with a fortune so large that those same critics gape in disbelief. Then I have seen disobedience destroy men in spectacle. They fight the bear market, doubling down, telling themselves it cannot go lower. They mortgage their homes, they borrow from friends, they pour good money after bad, all to prove the market wrong. And when the dust settles, they are ruined, disgraced, forgotten. Which path do you suppose is worth following? The punishment and the enrichment are not accidents. They are the natural consequence of attitude. The market is not malicious, nor is it generous. It is indifferent. But because it is indifferent, it rewards those who flow with it and crushes those who stand against it. It is the same with the seasons, with the tides, with the laws of nature. If you plant in winter, you reap nothing. If you sow in spring and harvest in summer, you are fed. Would you argue with the seasons, or would you obey them? Then why argue with the market, which has its seasons too? The truth is that obedience requires courage. It takes courage to admit that your opinion does not matter, that your hopes and fears are irrelevant. It takes courage to surrender to the movement and trust it more than you trust yourself. But that courage is the price of survival in speculation. The disobedient man hides behind excuses, blaming manipulation, blaming rumors, blaming anything but his own refusal to obey, and the market punishes him again and again until either he learns or he leaves the game. Do you have the courage to obey, or will you wait until punishment teaches you what obedience could have given freely? Noise feeds emotions, trend rewards discipline. That is a truth carved out of years spent before the ticker, hours watching the endless stream of figures that measure men's fortunes. Every market, every move, every rise and fall comes wrapped in chatter, speculation, gossip, and excuses. That chatter is what I call noise. It is the constant hum that clouds the mind, that stirs emotions, that makes men act when they ought to sit and sit when they ought to act. But the trend, the true movement of prices, the current that runs beneath all the confusion, that is what pays. The man who follows noise feeds his emotions and loses. The man who follows trend disciplines himself and profits. Which of those men do you want to be? Emotions are the ruin of speculators. They make you buy when you should not. They make you sell when you should hold. And they make you believe noise because it flatters your feelings. Hope, fear, greed. These are the children of noise. The tip from a friend excites your hope. The headline in the paper stirs your fear. The sight of others making money provokes your greed. But none of these emotions pay a dividend. None of them change the line of least resistance. Ask yourself, how many times have you acted on an emotion only to regret it afterward? And how many times did that emotion come from noise? Discipline, on the other hand, is the child of trend. To follow the trend, you must silence your emotions. You must ignore the tempting voice that says, "Take your profit now before it vanishes." You must disregard the fearful thought that warns, "The market is against you. Run before you lose everything." You must instead look at the evidence, the movement of prices, the persistence of the current. That requires discipline, the ability to master yourself. It is not easy. The market tempts you every day with noise, and your own mind conspires with it. But discipline is the only weapon that works. Discipline is what allows you to sit tight in the right position and let the market work for you. Do you believe you can master yourself, or will your emotions master you? I have watched men devour every scrap of noise they could find. They would scan the papers for hints, listen at the broker's office for whispers, trade on every piece of gossip as though it were gospel. Their faces lit up with excitement when the noise confirmed their hopes, and they grew pale with fear when it contradicted them. Their trading was nothing but an extension of their mood, swinging with the noise, never steady, never profitable. Their accounts dwindled, not because the market was cruel, but because their emotions were being fed with junk while their discipline starved. Tell me, have you seen such men always frantic, always desperate, always broke? Noise does not only feed your emotions, it disguises them as reason. You tell yourself you are selling because of some piece of news, when in truth you are selling because of fear. You tell yourself you are buying because of a tip, when in truth you are buying because of greed. The noise gives you a justification, a story, a mask. And behind that mask, your emotions devour you. The trend, meanwhile, does not need a story. It does not need excuses. It is there in the price, in the tape, plain for anyone to see. The man who chooses to see it and obey it is rewarded not only with profit, but with the calmness that comes from knowing he is following reality, not fantasy. Would you rather be deceived by stories or guided by truth? Consider what happens when the trend is up. Prices rise steadily, demand outweighs supply, the tape shows strength. If you obey, you buy and you hold. But then comes the noise, some article predicting collapse, some expert warning that prices are unsustainable, some rumor of trouble. Your emotions are stirred. Fear whispers that your profits could vanish, and so you sell. The trend continues upward, leaving you behind. You have fed your fear, but you have starved your profits. Now consider the opposite. The trend is down. Prices slide. Supply overwhelms demand. The tape shows weakness. You should sell or stay out, but the noise comes. Optimistic forecasts, friends telling you the stock is a bargain, your own hope insisting the turn is near. You hold on, or worse, you buy more. The price keeps falling. You have fed your hope, but you have starved your capital. Does this sound familiar? Have you not lived through such moments yourself? Discipline is the antidote. Discipline means you act not on noise but on evidence. When the trend is up, you buy and you hold as long as the tape confirms it, no matter what the noise says. When the trend is down, you sell or you wait, no matter what stories are told about bargains or rebounds. Discipline keeps you in the big move, where the real money is made, and keeps you out of the traps that noise sets. But discipline does not come naturally. It must be forged through experience, through mistakes, through the pain of realizing that your emotions are your worst enemies. How many mistakes are you willing to endure before you learn this lesson? I recall my early days in the bucket shops when I had no access to the grand theories of finance. All I had was the tape and my notebook. I learned by watching the movements, by testing systems, by losing and winning small sums. And what struck me was this: whenever I trusted the movement, I gained. Whenever I let myself be swayed by noise, I lost. The lesson was clear even then, though I was too young to grasp its full depth. Discipline was profitable, emotion was costly. But knowing the lesson is not enough. One must live it. Day after day, trade after trade. Are you strong enough to live it, or will you fall back into the arms of noise? Noise has another trick. It convinces you that you are missing something. It whispers that others know more than you, that there is a secret you have not discovered, that if only you listened harder, you too could profit. That fear of missing out feeds your greed, and you chase after the noise, always looking for the magic word. But there is no magic word. The tape is the only source you need. It contains all the knowledge of all the market participants combined. Every buyer and every seller has cast his vote, and the result is there in the price. What more do you require? What secret could possibly matter more than that? And yet, will you believe the tape? Or will you keep listening for whispers in the corners? The market rewards discipline in ways beyond money. It makes you calm. It makes you patient. It makes you less susceptible to the storms of noise. You learn to trust the process, to endure the waiting, to sit tight. You learn that doing nothing is often the wisest action of all. But to reach this state, you must starve your emotions. You must deny them the food that noise provides. Like any appetite, if you stop feeding it, it weakens. And as it weakens, your discipline strengthens. Can you make that choice, day after day, to turn away from the chatter and return to the tape? I tell you, the market will always provide more noise than you can ever consume. Every day, every hour, someone will offer you a reason to doubt the trend, to abandon discipline, to indulge your emotions. If you let them, they will drain you dry. But the market also provides a trend, clear and impartial. That trend, if obeyed, will carry you to profits greater than you imagined. One path feeds your emotions and leads to ruin. The other path rewards your discipline and leads to enrichment. Which path do you think most men take? And which path will you? The trend is the market's truth. Everything else is opinion. That is the law of speculation as I have lived it, and it is the only law that endures. You may listen to 100 voices. You may read 1,000 pages of reports. You may fill your head with theories and explanations. But in the end, the market itself will decide the value of your holdings. It does not care what you think. It does not care what the experts declare. It does not even care what the government or the newspapers proclaim. The market has one truth, and that truth is revealed in the trend of prices. Do you believe otherwise? Then ask yourself how many fortunes have been built by opinions alone, and how many by aligning with the unmistakable current of the market's movement. I learned this when I was no more than a boy standing in the bucket shops. I had no access to inside information, no analysts whispering in my ear, no powerful friends feeding me tips. All I had was the tape, the figures that ticked by one after another, and the notebook in which I scratched down numbers. The tape showed me movement, and that movement was the truth. When the prices kept climbing, it meant buyers were stronger. When they fell steadily, it meant sellers were stronger. It did not matter why. The why was the opinion of others, always after the fact, always changing. But the movement itself, that was fact. That was truth. Do you see how simple it is? Do you see how hard it is for most men to accept? Men are addicted to opinions. They cling to them as if their survival depends on being right. They will argue with the market because they cannot let go of the notion that their view must prevail. They say, this stock is undervalued, it should go higher. They say, the market has risen too much, it must come down. These are opinions, and they may be clever, they may even sound convincing, but they are worth less than nothing if the trend says otherwise. For when the price keeps moving in the opposite direction, the opinion is revealed as vanity. The trend is reality. Do you want to live in reality, or do you want to live in vanity? The trend is impartial. It does not flatter you. It does not consult you. It does not need you. It is the sum of all forces, all buying and selling, all fear and greed, all hope and despair. It is the collective judgment of the entire market, and it cannot be ignored without cost. When you align yourself with it, you place yourself on the side of truth. When you oppose it, you are crushed, no matter how sound your reasoning appears. Think of a man who insists the sun ought not to rise tomorrow. His opinion may be passionate, it may be eloquent, but it will not stop the dawn. In the same way, your opinion will not stop the market from rising if the trend is up, nor from falling if the trend is down. Do you grasp how small your own view is compared to the great current? I have seen traders spend hours debating reasons. They sit in the brokers' offices exchanging rumors, dissecting news, building arguments. They convince one another that a stock must behave in a certain way, and then the tape moves in the opposite direction, calmly, relentlessly, ignoring all the noise. Those men argue harder, insisting the market is wrong. But the market is never wrong. The market is always right. It is the individual who is wrong, the opinion that is mistaken, the argument that is irrelevant. The price is the truth. Why do so few accept it? because they would rather defend their ego than admit they are wrong. A man who recognizes the trend accepts truth, no matter how unwelcome it may be. If he owns a stock and the trend turns against him, he sells, even if it means admitting a loss. If he sees a market climbing, he buys even if it feels late. He does not argue, he does not debate, he obeys. And that obedience enriches him. The man who clings to opinion refuses to sell when he should, refuses to buy when he should, because his pride is at stake. He confuses his vanity with truth, and the market punishes him for it. Have you ever held a losing position simply because you could not bear to admit your mistake? That was your opinion battling the market's truth, and which of the two won? Consider the great movements of history, the bull markets that lifted prices to heights unimagined, the bear markets that dragged them into the abyss. Were these driven by opinions? No, they were driven by the weight of money, the shift of supply and demand, the great tide of capital. And yet at every stage, there were opinions. At the top of the bull market, men argued it would go higher still, that prosperity was endless. At the depths of the bear market, men argued it would recover tomorrow, that it could not go lower. The trend ignored them all, following its own law until it had run its course. Truth does not bend to opinion, opinion bends to truth. Which side do you choose? The beauty of the trend is its simplicity.